Good afternoon. This is Dave Byers, Chairman. I will call the meeting of the Criminal Justice Commission's Information and Technology and System Improvement Committee to order. Staff, can we call the roll? Oh, let me first remind everybody that we want to remind all the members of this body that ACJC is now live streaming the meeting to allow our stakeholders and members of the public to access today's conversations. The staff has set the Google Meets to highlight anyone speaking. So please remember to mute your microphone unless you are speaking. In addition to the live stream, the meeting is being recorded for compliance with the Arizona Open Meeting Law. So now would you go ahead and call the roll?
David Byers.
Here.
Heston Silbert.
Tim Chung for Heston Silbert.
Greg Mingarelli.
Lieutenant John Brambilla for Greg Mingarelli.
Sheila Polk.
Present.
Steve Stahl.
Here.
And Chief Nanos.
We have a quorum.
Chairperson Byers, we have a quorum.
Thank you. First, second item on the agenda today is the approval of the minutes from our September 15th meeting. Let's see here. The minutes were submitted, distributed to the members. Does any member have any changes or edits to the meeting minutes that have been submitted? If not, I think we can just approve the minutes as submitted. Okay, the third item is the Full Service Forensic Crime Laboratory Grant Program. Candace, are you going to report on that?
Chairman Byers, I will be reporting on that project due to the fact Candace is monitoring our YouTube stream to make sure that it's running. So I will be providing that update.
Thank you. Mark.
The first thing I would like to do is show my screen. You all see all the information in your packets. Okay, you all should be able to see my screen now. Chairperson Byers and members, every year the Information Technology Committee approves the Full Service Crime Laboratory Forensic Funding Program. And you all make the recommendation to the full commission of the funding allocation amounts. Our role is to provide an update on how the fund is doing, and then to go through the process of answering any questions you may have about the Full Service Forensic Crime Lab. So basically, I'm not going to read all this to you all, but the Full Service Crime Lab has a definition what constitutes a full service crime lab. And each of the agencies that receive these monies meet those conditions. Currently, right now, there are 4 agencies that receive funding from this fund, which would be Phoenix Municipal Crime Lab, Mesa Municipal Crime Lab, Department of Public Safety, and the Maricopa Medical Examiner's Office, if I'm not mistaken. So every year we meet with the crime lab directors. Actually, we meet like 2 to 3 times a year with the crime lab directors, and we go through the assessment of what the fund looks like and what their needs are. This year, we're in the process of doing a couple of things. Last year, the commission approved for us to change and update the language for the definition of a full service crime lab to come into more of a compliance of how the terminology is today. So we're in the process of going through the GERC process to get those rules updated, what constitutes a full service crime lab. So the fund how the fund stands today is last year we awarded $500,000 to each of those crime labs. DPS has 2 crime labs, and then the other 3 crime labs, which total $500,000. The fund balances as it stands as of January 31st, we had $278,318 in the fund. Out of that funding, we still have to pay 1/4 of funding, which is about $125,000. We anticipate that at the end of FY21, we will have approximately $284,707 available. And remember, about 2 years ago, we wanted to make sure that this fund always had money in the fund to make sure we could pay the receipts, because this is an allocation fund. So therefore, at the beginning of January, we would have to allocate $125 for their first disbursement for that quarter, which would bring that fund down to approximately $150,000. Right now, the fund collections continue to decline. Right now, we're averaging about $49,000 a month in fees coming in. The previous fiscal year, we were averaging about $54,000 a month coming in. So therefore, as you can see, the fund continues to decrease. So our projected end balances at the end of FY22, we project that it would be about $592,099.
Mark, remind me where the funding for this comes from. It's hooked to traffic, I think, or something, isn't it?
This fund comes as part of the CJEF, if I'm not mistaken, allocation portion. It's a certain percentage, and I can't think of it off the top of my head. Something like 4.6% of the fund goes into this fund, if I'm not mistaken. So this is where this fund, so this is part of that CJEF funding.
Yeah, and CJEF predominantly comes out of traffic, so that continues to decrease. Okay.
So basically, the recommendation this year is to keep the funding level at the same amount of $500,000 and award the agencies basically the amounts allocated on the screen. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for Mark from the members?
Yeah, this is Tim Chung. As Mark described, the revenue in this fund has been decreasing, consistently over the past several years. And the available funding for the labs that we support doesn't look like it's going up anytime soon. I believe we need to modify, but not this year, but in the future, I believe we need to modify our allocation formula, because it doesn't appear that this amount is going to be sustainable. We're allocating a minimum of $100,000 per lab. This year, we have a total of 4 labs within the state that qualify for this, 2 of them being DPS. But we need to consider if Scottsdale PD qualifies and/or Glendale PD, because they have labs, and I think in the future, it's very possible that we'll have up to 6 labs in the state. So I would just, open for discussion whether we should modify the allocation formula. One of the ways is to maybe reduce the base allocation that's given to each lab. And there's multiple ways we can do that, whether you do it on the percentage of population served or some other formulas that maybe we can come up with in the next several months.
Well, Tim and Mark, right now we've got almost $50,000 coming in a month. That's $600,000 a year, right?
Give or take, yes, sir.
And we're only allocating out $500,000. So in my mind, we'd be having an increasing balance by $100,000 every year. So we still have a little flexibility. And if more labs come in, do they have to wait till the next year's appropriation or next year's allocation?
Yes, sir.
So then Tim, I'm not sure I'm following. Do we need to do anything this year?
I would say not, no, for what we have this year, Mr. Chair, I think it's agreeable. But my worry is this funding is declining, and it has declined over the last several years. My fear is that we will not if we allocate, the base allocation for every lab is $100,000. That's the bare minimum. If we bring on 2 other labs, will we be able to sustain? Because obviously DPS, we have 4 labs in the state, 2 of the labs qualify. And this year we have 3 other labs, Mesa, Phoenix, and Tucson. So this year I think we're doing good. I'm just asking that we look at potentially modifying the base allocation or the allocation model formula that we're using currently. I'm just afraid of the base allocation.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you bringing it up, but it seems like every year we meet with the lab directors, and so next year, if the funding continues to decline, that could be their recommendation, right, to adjust the distribution formula. The other factor, of course, is will traffic tickets go up? We've had a reduction of almost 1 million traffic tickets a year over the last, it's probably gone about 5 years now. And so then the pandemic hit, really dropped off. So most of the criminal justice enhancement fund funding comes off of traffic. And if that returns, then we could start to see the revenue. If it doesn't, then you're right, it's going to continue to stay down or even decline more.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, this is Andy.
Yeah, Andy?
I would never speak for Ms. Polk, but she has directed me to begin trying to have conversations at the legislature around just funding and these funding kind of issues in general. So I have reached out and I've asked or made a request to the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee that if he felt he had time available on one of his upcoming earlier committee agendas, now that we get through crossover for time, that we actually make a presentation on funding and how it's tied to tickets and what that's looked like over the last number of years as a way to begin preparing the legislature for a deeper conversation around, is this a sustainable funding model? So, I think we're well aware that a lot of agencies, a lot of criminal justice priorities are being funded this way and appear to be heading on a slow downward glide path to obscurity. And what can we do to begin addressing that? So, Colonel, hopefully we can gain some traction with those conversations and see if there's a different funding mechanism that the legislature might consider going forward to put additional resources back into these kinds of programs. Thank you, Mr. Byers.
Yeah, Andy, along those lines, I've also met with the chairman and brought the same point out and explained that it was not affecting just the courts, but all of the recipients, as well as JLBC. And JLBC staff know about this. And I know they focused on it somewhat. So that'd be good if you could continue that discussion, because the trend for years now has really gone down.
Yeah, we've made this one of our budget issues with the governor in our budget submission every year for the last couple of years. So it is certainly something that we have been talking with members about whenever we have the opportunity.
So Tim, thanks for raising that. Sheila?
Mr. Chair. Yeah, can I ask Dave, were you able, you just now made the statement that the traffic tickets account for, I don't know what your words were, the majority of the money that comes into CJEF. Have you been able to determine what percentage of CJEF revenue comes from those traffic tickets?
Yes, I sent you an email last night with that answer.
Thank you. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, my staff was able to actually even separate civil traffic, which is the majority.
Okay.
I could look it up. If you take a look, you should have an answer for me. It was a substantial amount. I just can't remember. I hate to say the amount. I'll get a chance during this meeting. I'll look up the email, but it's.
I'll look it up, Dave. You don't need to. I can find it while you're chairing the meeting. I'll see if I can find that email. But along with what Andy was just saying, This issue affects so many criminal justice programs, this decline in CJEF revenue. And it's not just the labs, but our system is not going to be able to function if we have to continue cutting around every corner. So ECJC, we used to have a subcommittee that was looking at CJEF. It was under the leadership of Chief Danny. I can picture him. I just can't think of his last name. But anyway, he retired. And what was it?
It was Chief Sharp from Oral
Sharp. Yes. And that committee has not met since he retired. The conversations Andy and I are having, he's doing some work at the legislature, but it may be that we need to reconvene that. One of my suggestions is make that a joint committee with other entities like ASPOST, which depends almost solely on revenue from CJEF, APAC as well. There are some big issues now out there, and we have to figure out a way to successfully bring that issue to the attention of the legislature and the governor.
I fully agree. And the answer to your question, my memory was right. It's 78% of all criminal justice enhancement funds come from civil traffic violence. And I mean civil, that doesn't include criminal, but the majority of it is civil traffic. That's our best estimate. Also, I'll just mention as a related item, especially I think it impacts DPS here, because traffic tickets are way, way down. That means defensive driving attendance is way, way down. And there are also related called surcharges on those that also go into law enforcement, particularly DPS. I think there's a $40 fee that generates about $10 million a year. And I think that attendance is down by 50% this year. So I think since we're discussing how to grant this money out, I think your idea of dealing with this is a terrific one, because it's been a problem for years and it's really now almost a crisis. And one other consideration, I've talked to JLBC and the governor's staff about COVID money. There's a potential that the states are going to receive a large infusion of CARES Act money, and we could consider even one-time allocations of some of those funds over the next year or so as another possibility.
Yeah, Mr. Byers, just so you know, our victims funding is down about 40% this current year compared to where we were 2 years ago.
Well, we built a system, and I was part of it over the 90s, based on fees charged to people who come into the court system through traffic, through misdemeanor cases, filing fees, all those things, and everything's down. Our caseload overall is down 1 million cases a year since the high point. So, anyway, back to the specific before us. This is the recommendation that comes from staff. Any further discussion on the crime lab allocations for this year? If not, do we have a motion?
Mr. Chair, motion to approve staff's recommendation of allocation to the full service forensic crime laboratory grants.
Is there a second?
And this is Tim Chung. I second that.
All right, we have a motion and second to approve the staff's allocation of $500,000 to the crime next year. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, raise your hand. Say aye, so I can see you waving. Any opposed, raise your hand and say no. All right, passes. Okay, item 4 on the agenda is an update on a variety of criminal justice system improvement projects. And I'll turn it over to Mark and any other presenters who want.
All right, so the first thing we have actually is the order of protection project. So basically, we released the latest version of the AZ Point system On February 19th. We've held 2 trainings with the law enforcement agencies or service agencies since that release. We are now in the processes of working out any little bugs they may find or any issues that the agencies may see due to the release.
Hey, Mark, could you stop sharing your screen so we could see more of the people? Unless you're going to show a different presentation. You've still got
No.
the tab up. There you go. Much better.
All right, thank you. So we have done trainings. We're now fielding feedback on the new release. We are in the process, as you know, we are running a bill to make some changes to the AZ point system. Now, it won't change how we handle the orders. So basically what we're changing is who submits the order to NCIC. And that's a lot of technical work as to making sure that the sheriffs are comfortable with the information that they will be seeing and that they would be acting upon. We held 1 meeting already pertaining to the rewrite or the refactoring of AZ Point, and we have another meeting scheduled for March 4th to actually get into a design specification of what we could agree on with the Sheriff's Department and what DPS will approve as a new work process for submitting orders into NCIC. So that'll be our next phase. From my understanding yesterday from our meeting that the legislation has moved over or will be moving over, and we are asking for a delayed effective date. And then there are some other issues surrounding what do we do in time until that new feature becomes available to where the sheriffs take over. And that's pretty much where we're at with AZ Point. The system is working as intended during this pandemic. It still shows a lot of value to the victim services community. They are liking it. For the most part, law enforcement is used to it now. Though the first year was a little rocky, but now they understand and are able to basically make the efficiencies that are needed. And now we're just waiting on the data from last year. So the data is being run and pulled so we can know exactly how many orders were served, how many were entered into NCIC as opposed to how many were issued. So now we're just waiting on the data component. And we have to have that data component to apply for our next round of grants for NCHIP and NCIC, for NCHIP and NICS. So that's the general update on orders of protection. I don't know if you have anything you would like to add, Mr. Byers.
No, I know we're still having some glitches technically with the Maricopa courts, but they're working on that. And I will point out that on our website, the court's website, we do have an interactive dashboard that does show the number of orders of protection. I believe right now it may not have the Superior Court data, and it's got all the limited jurisdiction courts. But if you ever want to monitor what's going on, you can. It's interactive and updated every month or so.
We're trying to get at the data where you can say how many people went through AZ Point as opposed to how many people filled out paper. So we're looking at really doing an in-depth analysis on where we're at and what the processes were with the orders of protection. So then we can start measuring compared to when we were totally paper-based as to now we went to this digital platform. So we're looking for a little bit more data than that.
Yeah, no, I understand. I just was mentioning that we do have that, but we need more analysis for the grant. The number of orders of protection are down, but down less than I would have thought. You know, in the old days, or the pre-AZ Point days, a substantial number of people got orders and they never served them. Very large number. So I would have expected, you know, people who, you know, weren't sure they wanted to get an order, you know, those numbers would drop. And they have dropped somewhat, several thousand, but not as much as I might have thought. So anyway, it seems to be working pretty well.
Mr. Byers, this is Andy. Just as a point of clarification on the legislative process, it did pass out of the House unanimously on the 22nd and has gone over to the Senate and has been referred to the Senate Judiciary Committee. So we'll work with the chairman on getting that scheduled, probably not next week, maybe the week after or the following week once Mark's had his second meeting and we can hopefully identify the needed delayed effective date that everybody is comfortable with.
Thanks, Andy. Any other questions for Mark about AZ Point? Okay, let's move on to e-warrants then, Mark.
All right, so since all you have this information in front of you all, I won't share my screen so I can stay on camera for the most part. You all have an update for e-warrant. So basically, those are the counties and municipalities that are participating within the e-warrant project. Right now, we're in the process of refactoring the warrant itself because effective January 1st, the warrant formats changed. And so the courts are in the process of building the new templates for the warrants, and then we'll get ramped back up to start soliciting law enforcement agencies to join the e-warrant platform. The agencies that are using it right now really like it. Just so you know, for the people that's not familiar, this platform works if you are a law enforcement agency and your court is an Ajax court, we can automate the warrant process from the time you request a warrant from the court all the way until it's pushed to a CJIS, to where there's no paper that has to be transferred back and forth. Also, when the warrant is quashed, canceled, or executed, or whatever the case may be, that information is done all electronically and the courts gets an update. So what we're really trying to do is minimize people being picked up on warrants that have expired or no longer valid. And so this is a huge deal right here to get this done and to get more law enforcement agencies on board. We're leveraging JWI to do this. And basically for an agency to join, it's $4,800 for 10 licenses. But the thing about the $4,800, you get the whole JWI suite, meaning you get all the law enforcement capabilities pretty much that JWI provide for that $4,800. And it was a big lift for DPS to allow us to be able to use their backbone to be able to do this e-warrant process right here that we're doing right now. And I believe DPS is using it too right now for their warrants, the same process. So with that, I'll take any questions, Chair.
Any questions for Mark regarding e-warrants?
Yes, Sheila Polk, just a quick question, Mark. Your handout says that a contract project management company has continued to facilitate meetings with Yavapai and others. What is the status in Yavapai?
Yavapai is up and running.
Oh.
Yavapai Sheriff's Department is utilizing the project right now.
Great.
So they're pointing, and also I believe Prescott Valley or Prescott Valley PD. I think you got 2 Prescott Valley law enforcement departments up there. So you got, I think you have 2 agencies in Yavapai County, 2 local police departments that's utilizing the e-warrant platform.
So probably Prescott and Prescott Valley PDs.
Yes.
Yeah, hi, Mark. Lieutenant Brambilla, Prescott PD. So yes,
Okay.
and I oversee records and dispatch, and we are utilizing that e-warrant system as well.
So what do you think, since you're utilizing it, so they can hear it instead of me just reporting out on it?
Well, you know, we don't have a ton coming through, but it definitely is streamlining the whole process for us. And same thing, we went through the whole switch with JWI and things like that. So we're seeing it out in the field. Our officers are going to be able to start running their own 2729s, their license checks, warrant checks. Records is utilizing the e-warrant system. So seems to be streamlining things for us and making things a lot easier when we're getting the warrants entered and cleared and things like that. So far, so good.
That's what I'm hearing from all the JAD meetings that we're having. So glad to hear it.
Cool. Thank you.
Other questions regarding e-warrants? Okay, next item is conditions of release. Mark.
Conditions of release was a project that we started about 2.5 years ago, 3. We went all the way, we developed a white paper on conditions without consequences that explained the gap that we had with conditions of release. And just to remind everyone, the issues we have with conditions of release is 1, no one knows that a condition is out there. Conditions of release typically are not in any type of repository except for in Maricopa County Superior Court, and they're the only ones that can see their conditions in the Sheriff's Department. Next, the judge, if a person commits a crime in, let's say, Goodyear, and they have a condition, and then they could commit a crime in Yavapai County, no one knows what those conditions are in Goodyear because they're not shared amongst law enforcement. So our goal was to take the conditions of release and put them all in one location and have law enforcement be able to access that condition when they stopped someone or they ran a 27 or 29. So basically, if you have a condition and you're not supposed to have a firearm, law enforcement would know you have a condition, you're not supposed to have a firearm. Or you have a condition where you are to have no contact with the victim, and you respond to a house and he's at the victim house, you know they're in violation of their condition. Well, we started all the process. We got everything lined out of what our gaps were, what we believed, and what our needs would be. And we got hit with COVID. So COVID made everybody have to ramp up, get to be able to work in remote environments, have agencies drop what they were working on prior to. But not only did we get hit with COVID, we implemented AZ Point pretty much at the same time. So basically right now for the conditions of release project, people just don't have the resources to do it. So this is going to be a project that we're going to have to put on the back burner, and we're going to have to write to the feds and just say, basically, at this present time, due to the circumstances, we will not be able to fulfill this project as we intended it to be. So this is going to be one of the projects that will fall off for now, and then we will try to pick it up sometime at a future date. Because remember, we went through the whole process and everybody agreed we needed to do it. We went through all the court committees and everything like that. But at this present time, people are IT'd and stressed out and resource limited. So we'll pick it back up sometime in the near future, sometime in the future when maybe the environment is much more conducive to being able to do something that's a real need for the state of Arizona. And so with that, I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Mark on conditions of release? Mark, the only thing I would add to that, I think what you said is all accurate. I think we also learned, at least I did and the courts did, a lot of lessons with AZ Point. And so when we do go forward with this project, we've got to look at it more comprehensively about how you not only implement it, but how we support it going forward. This project will be as complicated as AZ Point when we go to do it. So it'll be down the road. But we'll have to really look at not only the initial implementation, but the support and ongoing efforts to maintain it once it's done. Okay, I guess we're down to ADRS system reports.
I'm going to have Shayla Gillian give that update.
Thank you, Mark and Mr. Byers. And good afternoon, everyone. There is a handout in your packet if you want to follow along, but we currently have.
Why don't you share, if you would, because if people are watching this and they don't have the material, they can't see it.
Okay, I can share my screen.
Thank you.
Would be better.
So we currently have 6 agencies, while Mark's pulling that up, that are fully operational and submitting information completely electronically to DPS. And those are highlighted in green here. So we have the Attorney General's Office, Coconino, Greenlee, Maricopa, Navajo, and Pinal counties. And then all of those highlighted in yellow are in various stages. So we have 5 agencies currently that are in the queue ready to resume testing with DPS, those being Apache, Cochise, Graham, Santa Cruz, and Yavapai counties. DPS is in the process of converting their testing environment for the ACCH data, so they aren't able to test any agencies at this time. But once that conversion's been completed, we'll be able to pick up with those 5 agencies testing and get them hopefully finished out relatively quickly. And then we have Yuma County, who is in the process of switching their case management system. So the ACJC funded a new case management system for them. They're projected to go live with their new CMS PBK on April 26th. we'll give them about a month or two to really get comfortable with the new system, and then we'll start that process with DPS pending we're able to resume testing and get that integration process started with them. And then La Paz County, I believe last time I reported, they did transition to PBK, so they have the ability to be a part of ADRS. They just haven't been comfortable yet with the system. I plan on reaching out to them again just to touch base in the next few weeks here to see if they are feeling better and ready to kind of take that integration piece on. If we could get them to test when DPS is ready, that would be awesome. And then Pima County, we're kind of in a limbo with Pima County. They may be switching to PBK. If that's the case, they'll switch to that case management system and we'll help with the DPS integration after that's completed. If they don't end up switching and they keep their current system, we will be working with Pima County Sheriff's Office to return data that's needed for them to be able to complete ADRS without needing a new case management system. And then the two counties in red are still the two counties that are uninterested in the project at this time. And with that, Mr. Byers, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions regarding ADRS? Well, I have one. What's been the impact on the repository? Do we have any data? Are we improving now because of this?
Good question. So Mark, do you want to take it or you want me to?
You can take it.
So we just got the DPS extract from last July 2020 to the end of 2020, December 31st. So our statistical analysis center is currently in the process of analyzing that. And if you remember, in order for a case to be disposed, we allow this 18-month kind of buffer, if you will, before we actually mark it as undisposed, right, or missing. So we don't actually know, although preliminary analysis suggests improvements, but I really think that once we get those 5, if not 6 or 7 agencies completely submitting electronically to DPS, allow that 18-month sort of window of time there, we'll really start to see a lot of those dispositions being improved.
Yeah, but you Maricopa's in now, and Pinal and Coconino. Maricopa and Pinal would be, those are huge. So,
Yeah.
of course, the next big one is Pima. So hopefully we've seen some positive results. I thought when the Maricopa one went in, it would be pretty significant.
Right. So
Mr. Byers, we'll do that analysis and have a report for Mark, usually by March or April for your next grant cycle, right?
yeah.
So yeah, we'll know pretty soon what the impact has been so far.
Okay, so hopefully we'll have a positive report when you get that analysis done. Any other questions on the ADRS project?
I have a question for Lieutenant Colonel Chung. Would you happen to know about will be ready to resume testing?
Yes. So we're working diligently with our vendor CPI, and it looks like we're going to have that go live. I'm told we're expecting in March. However, I'm told by April 18th.
Okay.
April 25th at the very latest. I've been in discussions with their CEOs, and we've been working on this for the past 2 months, getting the testing done. So I'm pretty confident that the April 18th date is going to be the date that we go live.
Okay, thanks. We can then start looking at May and June, maybe, or June, resume. Okay, appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, if there are no other questions on ADRS, let's move to the victims notification system.
As you all can recall, we received the grant in 2019 from the Office of Victims of Crime to implement a victim notification system. The notification system is for release from jail or custody. So our plan is to hook up the 15 county jails and the Arizona Department of Corrections. Right now, we went through the PIDGE process, so the PIDGE is done. We are now in the process of finalizing the contract. Once we finalize the contract with the vendor, which will be Appriss, we will then go through the process of bringing all the key players to the table and then demoing the product that we're looking at implementing in the state. Once we bring the sheriffs and DOC to the table, we then will put together a work group to work out the details of the system and how it's going to operate in Arizona. And then hopefully within 6 to 9 months, we will have a statewide victim notification system in play. And the reason I say that is because most of the jails in the state are using Spillman. So therefore, we don't have to build 15 different interfaces in a sense. The only other ones would be the PIMAs and the Maricopas for the most part. And then there's one more other jail management system out there for the most part. So we hope to have this thing wrapped up within 9 months to a year, give or take. We hope to start seeing data flowing within 6 to 9 months.
So Mark, the victim notification system is to notify victims when someone's released from either prison or jail?
Yes, sir.
And well, you said Maricopa and Pima have the different systems. Are you including them in your 9 months?
Maricopa will go first. Already got that agreement. So Maricopa will go first. And then depending on, once we have this meeting, we will line them up how they want to go. But once we build it for, say, Spillman, Pima has Spillman. So once we build it for Spillman, every other agency that has Spillman should be easy to turn on.
Got it. Good.
A quick question. Mark, is the notification, is it an auto-generated phone call? Is it an email, a text? What will the notification be?
The notification will be all of that. It'll be a note. You can get notified by phone, email, or text. Your choice.
What victim's choice then?
Yes, the victim's choice. They will self sign up. So they will go to a website, and to give you all a better understanding of what I'm talking about, I can take you to the site that will be similar to what we will be doing.
And Mark, while you're doing that, this is phase one. This is what we were able to write the grant for. I understand, Ms. Polk, I know there's interest at the county attorney level to potentially utilize a system in the future for victim notification. So that's certainly something that we could look at, as a phase 2 or phase 3. But just to give you guys an indication of how I hope we're going to pay for this system going forward, the grant was really just to stand it up. What we found in other states that have implemented systems like this, which is in essence almost a real-time check on who's coming in and out of our jails and prisons, is that they've been able to partner with agencies that provide benefits and services that need to be turned on and off if somebody enters jail or prison. So your unemployment benefits, your workers' compensation benefits, to provide them a check before they run their weekly payments to be able to turn those services on and off. And we've seen states that have realized millions of dollars of savings from fraud and waste prevention because of being able to turn something on and off more real time and not have a couple of week lag in information before they do that. So we've already had an initial conversation with the Department of Economic Security about running a test once Maricopa County comes online, and hopefully we see the potential for enough cost savings that we may be able to have them put a interagency service agreement together where we'll pay for the ongoing maintenance of the system out of savings that the state realizes throughout these different kinds of programs. So if we're able to do that, then I think that's a great win for the state to provide better services for victims on the savings that the state is seeing through these programs.
All right, so you all should be seeing my screen now. So I went to Missouri statewide VINE system. And so we have an offender that I'm looking at is Tanya L. Moore. And each state is different. And that's why there's going to be a work group to work through this, how we want to do it. So basically you have the info right here and you can hit show photo if you want to. And this is all the information that you get from the DLC. If you want to register for an inmate that's in the Missouri Department of Corrections, you have to contact their victim services unit, as you can see right there. Now, if you're in a county jail, it's a little bit different. So we look at this person that's in Franklin County Detention Center. If you want to be notified of that individual, you click notify me of their status. And then it gives you the option of how you want to be notified: phone, email, or text. So there's different ways you can set your platform up in your state, depending on how you want to do it. So that is what we're going to walk through with the sheriff departments and the Department of Correction at the beginning. This system also has a great law enforcement tool attached to it. It has a feature to it called Bind Watch, where, say for instance, if you're investigating someone and they tell you they were in jail in Pinal County, so instead of you having to pick up the phone and call Pinal County, we're going to put you in a secure environment where you can go in and look and see when that person was booked into Pinal County and when they were released. Another feature that we're going to be implementing in this system is something called Justice Exchange. And what that does is, say for instance, if you need to talk to somebody as a law enforcement officer and you don't have enough information you think to get a warrant, you can put what's called an alert out there. And if that person gets booked into any jail within the state of Arizona, you will get an email message letting you know that Maricopa County just picked up Mark Peoples if you still need to talk to him. And so therefore, you could call Maricopa County and let them know you need to speak with them. So this thing comes with a lot of tools and a lot of utility that we're going to be looking at leveraging to get people to actually buy into this platform. And the good thing is, hopefully the victims won't be paying for this system. Hopefully it provides enough utility to the state to where they get enough cost savings that it pays for itself.
Well, Mark, to that point, it seems like this would be a terrific theme for the VOCA funding.
We tried, we got denied.
Well, maybe we need to try again. I just can't imagine another project that wouldn't be more of a direct service to victims, both on the notification side, but also knowing that law enforcement can use those tools. I just can't imagine how this wouldn't be right as a top priority. So maybe we need to retry. What agency? Who's going to run this on an ongoing basis? Once you set these things up, it does take work. I know we notify notification system, and it's not the biggest thing in the world, but it does take somebody to maintain it and change messages. So is that going to be ACJC or DPS, or who's going to run this?
ACJC will be running this.
Okay, so we need to kind of think about what staff requirements might be necessary to maintain this thing.
That's why we have Andy.
That's why I placed a moratorium on Mark retiring anytime in the next 10 years.
Yeah, maybe you probably are talking to other states that have, like Missouri, maybe get an idea of that effort. I don't know how big or little how the effort is to maintain it.
Well, I implemented Missouri systems and I tied it to our MODEX, our Justice Exchange. I tied it to a lot of different things. So when I implemented in Missouri, we had one person that ran it and they had another job beside it. So it's not that staff intensive to operate. My person ran the MOVAN system is what it's called in Missouri, and they were our victim rights compliance officer. So they ran both of those two things with a full-time staff member. So
Okay, well,
it's not staff intensive whatsoever because it's hosted.
I just want to piggyback on something that Dave Byers said and add another project to Mark's plate. But the county attorneys are all prosecuting agencies are mandated by statute to do voluminous victim notification within the context of the criminal case while it's in the court system. We all have full-time people who do nothing but victim notification. We are struggling right now with how to pay for them because the grant sources, including the ACJC Victim Services Grant, they're all drying up right now. And this is another issue that goes back to the CJEF funding. But if I've long looked at what we do. I've got, I have people who are calling, texting, and sending out letters trying to reach our victims. But if we had a way to streamline it with this technology, there is vast savings out there to be had in the state of Arizona if we had a different way to do victim notification than depending on personnel in all of our offices. So, Mark, would you add that one to your project list?
Well, it's already on my list to look at the expansion of it and how it operates for the county attorneys. The issue would be on some of the notification requirements. I don't know if the platform can fulfill. And so therefore, when we do look at the county attorneys, we're going to need lawyers in the room to make sure we're not violating any law, because Arizona has some strict victim rights laws compared to other states.
We do.
So we have to make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's. Because I mean, for right now, when you look at Missouri system, we have a simple law. We just have to send a letter or send a call or whatever on each hearing. And we can do that automatically. We don't need to have a person do that. We just go into the case, generate it, and once they set up, the system takes over. Only thing you want to do then is validate that that person got their letter at that time, and you get that validation through their pen. So it's things we're going to have to look at when we come down the path of implementing the county attorneys if they want to do this platform, to make sure we're not violating any victims' rights laws, because it is daunting when I looked at it from a process standpoint.
Well, when the time comes, sign me up. I will volunteer to work with you on it.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I can see what County Attorney Polk is suggesting here is if it could fulfill that service, I could see the county attorneys maybe deciding to contract with ACJC to provide some funding, be able to reduce staff costs if it could work. If it works, that might be another way to support it. However, again, I'll point out, the more we do like that, the more maintenance it takes, because people want to craft different messages and things. So it sounds like a good, really good base operation that could expand the victim notifications in a lot of ways across the state.
That is the one thing. Like in Missouri, we have the court information, and we all use the same generic form letter with the case hearing titles and everything's laid out structurally. And you're going to have to come to a consensus to do that for the system to kick off properly. So you have to get consistency in your forms in order for the system to work. And that was part of the problem when I looked at it, was seeing all the different forms that are used from the AG's office to Maricopa County to Pinal County to whoever. They all address their victims differently in their forms and how they identify cases which they deem a victim needs to attend the case or they don't need to attend the case. We took the position in Missouri when I set it up was that it was the victim's right to whether or not they wanted to attend. We just had to let them know. So if they want to come to court for whatever hearing is their right, we let them know. And if they don't want to come, we put at the bottom of the letter, your presence is not required. However, if you would like to come, you're more than welcome. Because sometimes you have a hearing and the hearing gets rescheduled. When it gets rescheduled, we send another notice right away that the hearing was rescheduled. So it's a lot of things we got to talk about when we're talking about hooking up the county attorneys, because we also got to tie into the court system to get the hearings, to know the triggers, to make the notifications.
Well, Mark, it seems like if we're get to a point where we can offer a service, and it would be then up to the county attorneys to decide whether they would want to opt into that service. And if they opt in, I would assume they would have to follow the guidelines or the procedures of that service. So if here's what your letter is going to look like, they'd have to make that decision.
That's one way to look at it. Yes, sir.
I agree.
Any other questions or comments regarding the victims notification system? Okay, let's move to the last update. That's the mobile fingerprinting.
All right, so as you all recall, a couple of years ago, maybe, no, it's been almost 3 years ago, we implemented mobile fingerprints into all the Superior courtrooms. I believe there's 173 mobile devices in all the Superior courtrooms. The goal of that was 3 years ago, we had about, maybe 4, we had about 159 people show up at the Arizona Department of Corrections with no criminal history. So the solution was to be able to let the judges know if a person has not been fingerprinted. So we put these mobile devices in the courtrooms, and before a defendant is sentenced, they put their fingerprints on these devices, and it tells the court whether or not that person has been fingerprinted or not. Now, that's the key. So they could have been fingerprinted for burglary, but now they're in front of the judge for robbery. So we're just saying that we had a fingerprint on file for that individual, and if they hadn't been fingerprinted for that robbery, then DPS and the Attorney General's office, I believe, would have to do a gap filler to be able to recreate that criminal history. Well, DPS and ADC, I'm sorry, would have to do the gap filler to recreate that criminal history for that robbery. So we implemented the mobile fingerprint devices, and we went from 159 a year to down to 12. All right. And so then the 12 that we had that showed up, 6 of them were unique in where they were adjudicated from a juvenile status to an adult status. And as you know, when you're adjudicated as a juvenile, your fingerprints are not taken in the ACH criminal history repository. It's a 07 print instead of a 01 print, I think, one of those prints. So we figured out the gap in that. And so now all the juvenile people in the sheriff's departments know if you get an adjudication, you need to fingerprint that juvenile to create their criminal history. And so the other 6 were just misses. So since we've implemented the 2FID mobile devices in the Superior courtrooms, we've had over 900, I believe, what word I'm looking for? We had over 900 people who hadn't been fingerprinted show up to be disposed, that they caught, that they sent for fingerprints. And most of these are what we call those cite and release offenses, DUIs, the sexual assaults, and the domestic violence type events. So the next phase that we're approaching right now is to be able to tell the judge that this person is in front of you for robbery, and we have a fingerprint for that robbery offense. And we're going to be using Mojave County Superior Court to run the pilot to start out. Mojave will be starting hopefully sometime in March or April. They have just moved, or they are moving courthouses. They're moving into a new courthouse.
Next week.
So, I'll say that again.
Next week.
Next week. So once they move into their new courthouse and they get all set up and established, we will then start that phase 2 to where we'll be able to tell the judge that that person is in front of you with a robbery charge, and that's what you're sentencing them on, is a robbery charge. Not that they got fingerprints, but it's from the burglary. So that is where we're at with mobile fingerprinting. After we do this phase, I would like to take this project to municipal courts, because that's where a lot of the cases get missed also. So we would like to take this thing to municipal courts and put these devices in municipal courtrooms. And the good thing about that is the more devices you buy, the cheaper the cost of the device. So the more we buy, the more we get the leverage for the device. So that is the update for mobile fingerprinting.
Now, Mark, when you say municipal courts, are you meaning to exclude justice courts, or you're just saying city courts for some reason?
I'm just saying city courts right now. That's the next step. And then we get down to justice courts.
Yeah, just so you know, there's quite a number of cases where the city court and justice court are at the same location with the same staff and the same judge. So what we can work with you on that, there's members that are a combination, not the big courts, of course. But anyway, well, that's great. We'll talk to you about that when you start that project. Any questions about mobile fingerprinting? Okay, hearing none, thanks for that update, Mark, on agenda item number 4. Item number 5 is the technical team, and that's also you, Mark.
Yes, we finally re-implemented our technical team. And basically the technical team role is to look at projects we're doing and to advise us of any pitfalls, gaps, or issues we may need to address as it relates to the technology we're looking at bringing in. We held our first meeting yesterday. It went fairly well. It went well, not fairly well. It went well. We're going to hopefully get them really engaged in the victim notification system process. And then they did have some questions, and for Dave, they really wanted to get more information. And I think Robert going to take this back for your new product you're bringing online called Caseline, with the digital evidence feed and so forth. So we had some good conversations surrounding that. But they're back up and running, and we'll hopefully, if y'all come up with new initiatives, we'll be able to bounce it off some IT and users to be able to give us a good idea of what it would take to implement any new products or any new projects that we would like to pursue. And that's basically it on the technical team.
Any questions for Mark? If not, agenda item number 6 is the legislative update. I don't know if Molly's with us.
So Molly's not in today, Mr. Chairman and members, so I'll just give a very brief update. I know that she had provided a kind of a written description for you, but most of you guys have been involved in the legislative calls that we've been having. So I just, again, just to give a real high level overview, there's been about 1,708 bills introduced this session so far, which is a good amount more than what is normally introduced. We're more normally down in the 1,300-ish range. So I think folks are making up for having to leave early last session. But just so you know, about 900 of those bills never got assigned or never made it onto a hearing agenda before the deadline date. So that number is going to go significantly down as we continue through the process. So far, there have been 42 bills that have been passed by both chambers and 35 bills that have been signed by the governor. None of which are overly exciting unless you don't want to have chickens in their fighting be equipped with any kind of equipment when they do their fighting. So there's a bill that creates a new penalty for providing enhancements to any kind of animal fighting by providing them with, I don't know if that's body armor or what it is, but that bill was signed by the governor. So that's always interesting to see what comes out of the legislature. This session is clearly, they're focused on a couple of main topics. Elections is one of them. Obviously, the Senate's been very focused on the election process. The House has a new committee, the Criminal Justice Reform Committee. So there's been quite a lot of talk around criminal justice reform topics and data collection. ACJC, the members approved our data collection bill at our meeting in November. That did pass out of the House unanimously and move over to the Senate in clean form and has been assigned to the Senate Judiciary Committee. So we will continue working along that process and hope to have that bill cross the finish line in its current form. The one change that we made from its initial introduction is there was a $300,000 appropriations ask that was included in the original bill to do the work around the system scan to understand what agencies have what data and put together a report that would go back to the legislature and outline costs associated with building the system. We were able to get the governor's office to agree to allow us to use funding that we still have available in Mark's ADRS project to complete that work. So we were able to remove the appropriations ask, which the legislature was appreciative of. We were going to have to do an environmental scan of the municipal level anyway. So we basically sold this to them as this is going to be a much more comprehensive scan of agencies that will accomplish the needs of both of these projects. So we're hopeful that we will continue along that path. A lot of the other bills that are out there that are requiring data to be collected and reporting ultimately appear that they would come through ACJC as well. And our main work with the sponsors and the people that have been pushing those bills has been to try and get the late effective dates that are beyond the work that's outlined in our bill so that hopefully we can accomplish our process and come up with a plan so that we're not making folks report data one way for a year and then have to switch over to something else when our system becomes available. Other than that, it's never a dull moment down at the legislature, and we will certainly keep you informed as we move forward if anything else comes up. And with that, sir, I'm happy to answer any questions that you or the members may have.
You know, I see Colonel Chung's hand up. Is that from before or current?
That was from before at our first motions. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
I thought you were just looking for a high.
To call the public now, let me ask the staff. I can see all the 12 people that are on this meeting. Is it possible, and there's no public, other than I see Tony Colson's here, but he's on the Zoom. Is there any possibility that there's other public, or would I see them?
No, there is no public right now. No one from the public have emailed us to request to speak or to inquire on anything we spoke about today.
All right, well, having no public present, unless Tony, I guess you're public. No, you don't want to say anything. All right, then the next meeting of the committee will be at the call of the chair.
I work for Andy, so I'm really not the public.
Okay. Mark, do you have any idea about a next meeting?
No, I do not, Chairman Byers. We hope to bring you all back together once we get this contract signed for the victim notification system. So you all could see what's going to be deployed, and so you all could weigh in on that. So that's the next meeting, but we don't know when that contract is going to be done.
Okay. Well, thanks for all the updates today. It looks like to me we're making some pretty good progress on these projects. Some of them have been taking years in the making, but it seems like it's paying off. And I'll certainly be looking forward to the report on ADRS. Hope that it made a real positive. Any comments from anybody else before we adjourn?
I'll echo those words of thanks. Mark, you and your team are pretty amazing. Great work.
Thank you.
If there's nothing else, we stand adjourned.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thank you,
Thank you all.
Thank you.